Thank you, Chair. We had dealt with the issue of the message in relation to the mandate given to Victor. But that wasn't the only message that Sgt Nkosi sent you on the 25th of March. If we go to page 177, that message was succeeded by a message at 9:08 p.m. Where Sgt Nkosi says, a message which is again from its language forwarded from General Dlamini, that says, "Captain, find below our vehicles for land to be given Kumfowethu in order of priority." And then there's a list of 7, and the first 2 are El Shaddai and Ngapesheya. Your response is, "Thanks, Mfowethu, I'm on top of this." Now, this message, did you recognize this message as a message originating with General Dlamini?
To its language, yes.
So General Dlamini was through Sgt Nkosi saying, "Find below our vehicles for land to be given to yourself in order of priority." And then El Shaddai and Ngapesheya are the first 2. What did you understand General Dlamini to be wanting through this message?
That I would be able to assist in checking compliance.
Assist in checking compliance?
This is also the 4th time
That's the
that
third.
this is coming on board, Chair. So at this stage, I've also indicated that I was a tad, irritated and annoyed because this thing was persisting right from page 148. So this was the fourth instance that I was facing with receiving requests of checking compliance. And at this stage, I had already indicated it. From my perspective, I already had an idea that it might not have been stated verbatim, but it was more than just checking compliance.
So by this stage, you were starting to suspect that they may be wanting you to rig the tender in favor of those companies?
I had suspicion because I've explained on many occasions that I can't do that, but the matter kept persisting.
And indeed, if they weren't asking you to rig the tender, it's difficult to make sense of order of priority, isn't it? I mean, what could order of priority relate to other than an attempt to rig the tender?
Check compliance starting with El Shaddai, then you can check compliance followed by Ngapesheya, etc.
But why would priority even be relevant if all they were asking you to do was to check compliance?
Because time permitting, you couldn't check all documents. It would take a considerable amount of time if you were to check any document if it's compliant.
But at this stage, it's not possible to cure any deficiencies in relation to compliance. The bids have closed.
100%. Hence, as I'm indicating that over and above that, I already had suspicions that this is over and above that, even though it wasn't stated to me verbatim. I knew that.
So, but because bids have closed, why would priority make any sense if all they were asking you to do is check compliance?
That's how I understood the message.
You still understood it to be relating to compliance.
Spot on.
And then you answer, "Thanks, Mfowethu, I'm on top of this."
Yes.
Yeah, why?
So at this stage, I realized that either I'm being taken for a fool here, because I've explained this on a number of occasions. So I'm also going to play along and take them for a fool. In terms of, it's fine. I'm on top of this because I needed this to stop. It was persisting over and over and over again. So I played along, I entertained, I used what we generally refer to as huffing and puffing.
When he sent you this list now, you must have had a conversation with him on the phone where he told you, I'm sending you a list. So there's the initial list that was preceded by his own telephone call. And you say in that call, he would have told you that he wants you to check for compliance. Now, at 177, that would have also been followed by, or preceded by a telephone call.
Commissioner Malo, in this instance, no, there was no telephone call.
So when he gives you a different list, because this is the different list from where you started, so it couldn't be a reminder without an explanation. He's giving you new companies.
Yes, Commissioner, but the context is the same. Once he gives me companies of this nature, with the starting point of the two, in my mind, I can already see and I can relate this to the context of 148, 152, and 157.
Even though he didn't say that to you. He
Even though
doesn't
he didn't say that.
say to you, Two Cops, Tautau, Vision, Vimtire, Shumile. I don't know if you know these companies, but he doesn't say to you, I would like you to check for compliance with these other companies. He just sends and you conclude, without him saying anything to you, you conclude that it's about checking compliance.
Yes, Commissioner. I related this to the beginning of 148, and I concluded when I read this message, it was in relation to that. Yes.
Just on the face of this message?
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mnisi, are you aware that the list on 177 is different to the list on 148? So they can't be asking you the same thing. If you look at the list on 148, those 7 companies, and presumably that's the people who purport to represent the EFF. Just have a look at that list in the second last chat. Do you see that it's not the same as the list on 177?
Yes, Commissioner, I see.
So if the earlier conversation, because you say this only happened once, where they asked you to check for compliance, once they get to 177, it's clear that what you have is an alternative list to the mandate given to Victor. So he's saying, this is the mandate given to Victor, but this is our list, which means this is the counter to the mandate given to Victor. The list on 177 can be the same as the discussion in 148 because they are completely different lists. So if on 148 you were asked to check compliance, that's not what you are being asked on 177.
Commissioner, my understanding when I read these messages, subsequent to the following discussions and the various occasions, that what was requested of me to do. And I related this to the same TMPD-01. They came in succession of one another. Even if you look at 148, they first request me to check Ngapesha El Shaddai and then a list of 7 companies. Moving further to 177, they send me a whole different list with a caption of a mandate to Victor, but then thereafter another list as well. So from my perspective, there's a clear understanding that this is in relation to one event. Yes, there might be competing views coming from wherever, which I'm not involved in and I will not entertain and I didn't entertain. From my context and understanding of the sequence of events, it was in relation to checking compliance, whether their priorities were changing or not.
So your understanding is that you are being asked to check compliance of 21 different security companies? Because these are 21 different security companies.
My understanding was that I must check compliance, yes.
Of 21 different security companies?
Yes. And then their priorities changed. I mean, from 148, they stopped sending me the list of 7. It was a different set. That's what they thought, that's what they expected.
And that, does it not surprise you that it's always 7? They come in 7s. They don't come in 5s. They don't come in 3s. They always come in 7s when they come to you. And that's not unusual for you.
It's in relation to the tender TMPD-1.
Yeah, but why 7?
Because 7 companies were appointed. I think that was the mandate, 1 per region. They must have obviously understood that.
Yeah. So 7 companies were to be appointed.
Spot on,
So
Chair.
when people send you 7 companies, the first thing you think about is it's not related to who should be appointed, it's related to checking compliance.
Yes, Commissioner, but can I explain, please?
Compliance with what, before you explain?
Compliance with mandatory requirements, administrative requirements, whether they were ticking the boxes. And it's something I couldn't do at this stage at all. I couldn't even advise on that.
And to be fair to you, you asked to explain, so explain and then go back to Mr. Chaskalson.
So what I was explaining, Chair, is that that's what they were asking me to do. And that's what made me link the two to the first discussion. The first discussion was on 148, please assist with checking compliance. If they keep on sending a list of 7 companies, it's in relation to that. Hence, you can see this persistence, Chair, and you can see why I wouldn't waste my time doing this. And
Mr. Mnisi, you
Yes.
can see why it couldn't have been a reminder. So your evidence this morning that they were reminding me cannot be correct, because if it's a different list, then you're not being reminded to check compliance of the previous list, because it's a completely different list.
I respectfully disagree with that, Commissioner. The request was to check compliance, whatever they were sending me. If you look at 148 as explained, right, I ignored that. I didn't even say anything. It was preceded by a phone call. That phone call is what expedited on what I was requested to do. If you look at the second instance on 152, that second instance, they just sent me 2, and it's after a phone call. The phone call this time comes first. There's a request while we're speaking. Did you check that? No, I did not check. I don't even remember what you sent me. They then sent that to me again, which is why, from my perspective, that's a reminder. On 157, similar thing happens. And then on 177, exactly the same thing happens. There's no way where I trigger that, firstly, and I respectfully disagree with that point of view, Commissioner.
Okay.
Now, you've just spent, these messages come from, in a period around about, from 8:30 p.m. on the 25th of March. You've spent the evening of the 25th of March in what should have been a meeting with Sgt Nkosi and General Dlamini, but turned into just a night out with Sgt Nkosi, remember?
It was not a night out. It was probably just lunch for like 45 minutes, not a night out.
Just 45 minutes. And it started roundabouts, I think the last, about 4:15 is when Sgt Nkosi arrived. So you just spent 45 minutes together, and you went your separate ways around about 5 o'clock. But you did spend 45 minutes together.
Yes.
And before that, on the same day, before you've spent that 45 minutes together, Sgt Nkosi has sent you 2 names, Ngapesheya and El Shaddai, early in the day. And now afterwards, he sends you 7 names saying, this is the mandate given to Victor by Nico. You don't know who Nico is.
No, I don't know who Nico is.
But these are 7 strange names.
Uh-huh.
And then he answers, he follows that up saying, here are another 7 names. Find below our vehicles for land to be given Kumpwetu in order of priority. You see that?
In order of priority?
In order of priority,
Yes, I see that.
You say, thanks, Mfowethu, I'm on top of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, this is ours, Mfowethu. Yes. This is the final list, right? Mm-hmm. So now is this huffing and puffing? You're playing along with him?
Yes.
I see. And it's just a pure coincidence that the top 2 on that list just happened to be awarded the contract a few months later.
It's not a coincidence, SC.
It's not a coincidence.
They were compliant. The documents that were submitted, that were evaluated, that were probity checked, deemed these companies as compliant.
No, well, there are many issues before you get to the award of a tender. Compliance is one of them. In due course, will show that they weren't remotely compliant. The second is whether they were the best bids. But of course, if you're not compliant, you shouldn't get your foot in the door at all. You accept that. There is a third issue. which is if there is an appearance of bias in the process in favor of a particular company, they should not be awarded a contract. In fact, the whole process should be nullified. Are you aware of that?
So there's no bias that's reflected here, Chair. I'm sorry.
Sorry, you say there's no bias here?
There's no bias at all.
I'm talking about the appearance of bias.
The appearance of bias is in the event that physical exchange of documents and there's physical proof to prove that. And once there's sufficient evidence, we can rely on that to take the matter forward.
Well, I mean, I don't want to enter into a legal debate with you, but I want to put some facts to you. By this stage, we have a series of texts which show that a complete outsider acting with the deputy head of the client department is repeatedly asking you to give preference to the bids of two companies, El Shaddai and Ngapashare. You accept that? 4 separate occasions.
I accept that with an explanation that it was for me to check compliance.
But earlier on, you recognized that by this stage, the 4th stage, you had started to realize that what they were actually asking for you to do was to interfere with the proper processes of the tender in favor of those companies.
Indeed, I mean, I've seen this and I see the persistence and I can read in between the lines. Unfortunately, at this stage, I still don't have sufficient evidence to confront anyone in reference to that. But from my perspective, in my own understanding, it was clear. I mean, you can't persist so much, being rejected, being explained to, but you still persist on the same matter. It's either you're ignorant or you're playing me for a fool, which was, of course, the second aspect. Hence, I had to decide to play along and to ensure that I deal with this matter once and for all. And with also all due respect, you will take note that after this and my purported playing along and entertaining, or rather huffing and puffing, it stops. Not ever again do I receive any communications of this nature.
Well, that's not entirely true, but let's look at the sequence. Let's go to page 444. And there, you'll see that on the 13th of April, General Dlamini sends 2 messages to Sgt Nkosi. The first one says, lease agreement for both company and director for rates and taxes. Interpretation of PI Act. 3 years financials must be done by independent auditor and signed or certification that they've been audited. Lease agreement of vehicles. The document submitted of Avis is a quotation, and we need an agreement with photos of vehicles, including a 5-ton truck. Public liability insurance for 10 million. And immediately underneath, afternoon, Captain, I trust you well and your family. Please push Becky to submit the above documents. These look like documents that would be mandatory requirements for compliance with that tender TMPD1. Is that not correct?
But we're sitting on the 13th of April.
Yes.
Tenders have been submitted and closed on the 2nd of October, SC. These documents are under lock and key.
Are you seriously, you've been through these documents, have you not?
So my question is, why would we infer that this chat here is in reference to that? Maybe firstly, I've never received this. This was never ever forwarded to me. You are now, with respect, SC, showing me a conversation between Sgt Nkosi and the Deputy Chief Dlamini. And you're pointing out areas of deficiency. This is clear areas of deficiency. I can see that. I'm just requesting for you to please show me the alignment between TMPD1 and on this.
Well, was a lease agreement for both company and director for rates and taxes a mandatory requirement for TMPD1?
Well, with your permission, I want to go to my annexures where I look at the mandatory requirements so that give you a certain answer.
You can just say yes or no if you know the answer. If you want to go to if you need to go to the annexures, by all means go there. But if you know the answer, let's hear it.
With your permission, please, SC, may I please go to my document so I can verify that?
Sure do.
So I'm on my bundle, and I'm on annexure GM 13. I'm going to start with page 162, and I presume this is stage 1, and it should be part of administrative requirements. So A is in reference to a tax compliance. B is in reference to CSD documentation. C is in reference to confirmation that the bidder's company rates and taxes are up to date. Original municipal bidder, statement for the bidder, not older than 3 months, and account must not be in arrears. Letter of statement and affidavit from landlord, or that the bidder has no disputed account and that the account is not in arrears. So based on this, there is a company document that's required or a letter in the form of an affidavit. So I can confirm that as a requirement. So here, we're saying a lease agreement for both company or director. What I'm seeing on page 163 of my bundle, GM 13, page number, item number C, it does request for a confirmation of the bidder's company documents for rates and taxes, 1, or a letter from the landlord confirming that.
So are you saying that item 1 in this chat on page 444 was not a mandatory requirement?
So what I'm saying, SC, is that on page 44, item 1 says, lease agreement for both company and director for rates and taxes. The actual documentation on GM 13 says or. You need to submit the companies, doesn't say both. Further,
Under the MFMA, is it permissible to award a contract to a bidder whose directors are not up to date with their rates of taxes? Do you know the answer to that?
the terms of reference and the specifications as discussed in the bid specification committee is key.
So you're saying this is not, there are no overriding requirements in the MFMA?
The statement of return, the statement that must be submitted, whether for the company or for the director, as per the specifications, must not be in arrears.
So if the directors are in arrears but the company isn't, you can still consider the tender?
In the event that the terms of reference as per the specifications are clear, that we want either or. So if whatever has been submitted,
I'm asking you a separate question. I'm asking you about a legal requirement that is higher than anything your specifications can say. Does the MFMA contain such a provision? Are you aware of that?
the MFMA contains a provision that the rates and taxes that are submitted must not be in arrears.
For companies and directors?
Or,
You say or.
yes.
Continue.
Well, I'll go to the second one. I think the first one, remember what I'm trying to do is to see an alignment or a linkage between 444 as well as the terms of reference. So from item number 1, I don't see that alignment because it says this requirement is for both. The terms of reference says 1. So that already from my perspective doesn't align to TMPD 1. Item number 2.
So before you go to item number 2, unless we are reading different documents, at 163, your page 163, item C from the top, it says confirmation that the bidding company's rates and taxes are up to date.
Yes.
And then D, in addition to the above, confirmation that all bidding company owners' rates and taxes are up to date. Am I missing something in your discussion with Mr. Chesterton?
Yes, so we are getting to D. Remember, I just touched on C. I'm getting to D now because we want to move on down the ladder.
You're not saying it's either or. I'm reading this to say, my reading of this suggests that you require both to be compliant.
If we look at both C and D, yes.
Okay.
Do we have to look at both C and D, or can we choose which of these requirements we're going to honor and which ones we're not?
No, we have to look at both C and D. These are mandatory requirements.
So that first requirement is tallies with the tender.
Yes.
Let's
By
look
virtue
at the
of both
second.
C and D, SC, yes.
Interpretation of PI Act.
Interpretation of PI Act.
What's this tender about?
The tender TMPD 1,
Yes.
illegal land invasion and illegal occupation of the city's buildings.
And what is the primary legislation governing that process?
Chair, that's TMPD competency, and that's why they're involved in governing, in complying with specifications. I can't answer that.
Do you know what PI Act stands for?
No.
Prevention of Illegal Evictions Act.
Okay.
Would you accept that that is the single most important piece of legislation governing the subject matter of this tender?
Amongst the rest, this is a key requirement.
Not amongst the rest, the single most important.
I see, with all due respect, all the requirements are equally important. Anyone that's not there results in disqualification. So it is equally important as all other mandatory administrative
I'm
compliance
talking about
matters.
legislation governing the subject matter of this tender, not qualifications to enter the bidding process. Legislation governing the subject matter of this tender.
So the specialists will be able to answer that, and the specialists will be individuals from human settlements as well as TMPD.
So you can't comment on that.
I don't know.
What is your response to 2 in terms of the requirements of the tender?
2, on the administrative requirements, I don't see that there. I'm going to stage 2 now. On stage 2, on 164, we start on 165. And I can see on item number 4, there is a reference that bidders must submit a complete copy of the Prevention of Illegal Eviction of an Unlawful Occupation Act. I agree to that.
How about 3?
I'm just jumping in between the 2. 3 references, 3 years financials must be done by independent auditor and signed or certification that they have been audited. So I'll presume that this must have been part of the administrative requirements. I'm going to go back up to 1 first, and then I'll see if they are there in B. So we've covered A in terms of the tax compliance certificate. B was the CSD. C and D made reference to the company's rates and taxes, as well as the individual's rates and taxes. E makes reference to ensuring completion of all bidding documents 1, 4, 5, 8, and 9. And then part of E is the failure to declare interest will be disqualified. Financial statements for the most recent 3 years or financial statements from date of existence for companies less than 3 years. The bidder must submit the signed, audited annual financial statements for the most recent 3 years, established for a shorter period, submit audited annual financial statements from the date of establishment. If a bidder is not required by law to prepare signed financial statements for auditing purposes, then the bidder must submit proof that the bidder is not required by law to prepare audited financial statements. So what I can confirm from what we're seeing here is that audited financial statements needed to be submitted. But the element of having an independent auditor sign them off a certification, I don't see that.
Sorry,
But I can agree that.
Sorry, maybe we're missing each other. What are audited financial statements if they're not signed off by an independent auditor?
Audited financial statements are financial statements that are audited. So,
And does the auditor not have to be independent?
yes. So what I'm looking at here is the elements which cover that. And I'm saying it is there, Chair, as part of, I think, the second, third line item from the bottom, where it said, if it's established for a short period, submit audited annual financial statements from the date. So it is audited financial statements that are required. I'm not disputing that. I was just explaining.
Let's go to the next item.
Next one is lease agreement for vehicles. Document submitted of Avis is a quotation, and we need agreement with photos of vehicles, including 5-ton truck. That must have been within the mandatory requirements, and I think that's covered on item 5, where it says lease vehicle, signed lease agreement by either director or company along with the title holder for certification. And the next one on the public liability insurance for 10 years, for 10 million, apologies. It's captured for under 7, 166.
So we've now established that all of these were mandatory requirements.
These are mandatory requirements as per GM 13, yes.
And General Dlamini is saying, afternoon, Captain, I trust you are well and your family. Please push Becky to submit the above documents. So what it looks like is that some 6 months after the tender has closed and documents are supposed to be under lock and key, General Dlamini and Sgt Nkosi are trying to make arrangements to cure 5 different mandatory disqualification features of the Nkapeshea bid.
That's what it looks like, but however, this doesn't also preclude this from being a bid in anywhere else. Why I'm saying that is because this is the 13th of April. There's no way documents could be amended from my point of view. I have outlined how the process operates, so I'm still struggling to see why this could purely relate to that, to TMPD1 from my perspective.
We'll get there. I want to take you to some other sort of strange features of this. Let's look at the top of page 455. This is
455.
455. This is Sgt Nkosi on the same day. General, I spoke to Becky now. He tells me he's spoken to Nico. You didn't know who Nico was, but...
Excuse me, SC, I'm not following. My 455...
445, sorry. Sorry.
Okay, 445, yes, I see that.
And you remember, you didn't know who Nico was, but Sgt Nkosi identified him as Nico Matobela.
Yes, SC, I don't know him.
And you said Nico Matobela had no legitimate role to play in this contract.
No, he's not an employee of the city as far as I'm concerned.
Well, Sgt Nkosi writes to General Dlamini, I spoke to Becky now. He tells me he's spoken to Nico when he was busy with the documents of El Shaddai. No? El Shaddai is one of the 2 companies that Sgt Nkosi has repeatedly been sending your way. And with hindsight, we believe he was asking you to interfere in the process in favor of El Shaddai. Nico promised to help out. Now he's no longer answering his phone. Please check, Nico. I will push Becky. These people must know it's not one thing. They must work as a team, not the other way. Please, General, intervene. We can't lose now. We've been waiting for this for a while. What does that look like to you?
So this looks obviously like they are assessing documentation, or they are preparing a bid document, or they are analyzing what the requirements are of a specific bid that they are dealing with, and they need to ensure that those companies' details or mandatory or administrative requirements are compliant. That's what it looks like to me.
And you don't see any link between that and TMPD1, the tender TMPD1?
See, TMPD1 had closed on the 2nd of October. The process that I've outlined and how I know the city operates, there's no way this could have related to that. So at this stage in time, this could be individuals working on bids from I don't know where. So I'm still at this point in time unable to conclusively say it's for TMPD1. What I can confirm is that it looks like individuals are working together on a submission. But it can't be a submission for the city of Tshwane because you can't be starting a whole bid from scratch. This looks like people analyzing, assessing, auditing documents that they have and preparing a bid. That's what it looks like to me.
Let's go to your chats now. Let's go to page 228. This is now the 24th of April.
Yes.
At message time 12:39, actual time 2:39 p.m., you send to Sgt Nkosi a message saying, Nkapeshea is grade B and has nothing in the documents.
Yes.
Mfowethu, please send to US and request him to provide him with information for the correction. We need grade A guards.
Yes.
Yes, so you did send those messages?
Yes, these are my messages and I did send them.
Yes, what were you doing?
So at this point in time, Sgt Nkosi had sent me a document for another institution where they were preparing a bid. So as a bid that they were busy preparing, I looked at the published tender document that was there, spotted the key requirements. Key requirements of that tender document was grade A, nothing to do with grade B. So I was saying, because I knew that the general would assist him on preparing bids in some way or form, they need to take it up with him so they can work on that together. This, I can assure you, was not in relation to TMPD1 whatsoever.
So your version is that the General, yourself, and Sgt Nkosi were freelancing on the side for a tender for another government institution. Is that the version?
Not freelancing, providing bid clarification on the tender that they'd been working on.
Sorry,
There's no-
providing what?
Well, he had asked me to look at the clarification on the document that was there. I'm not freelancing because I'm not expecting any payment. I don't want any payment. I'm purely providing advice on something that they're interested in, SC.
So you are offering free tender advice to Sgt Nkosi, and you're suggesting that he gets the assistance of General Dlamini, another employee of the city, to get more free advice on his tendering processes.
Of course,
That's correct.
that's exactly what I'm saying.
Where do we see this other document or whatever was sent to you to advise on? Because you must have been working off something to saying Ngapesheya is grade B and has nothing in the documents.
Yes.
To say we need a grade A guide,
Yes.
and then ask him to provide information for correction.
Yes.
You were working from what
I have
to be
seen-
able to make
yes.
those observations?
Yes, Commissioner, I've seen the actual tender document for that institution.
So how did you receive it? Was it given to you in hard copy? Was it sent on email? Was it sent on WhatsApp?
No, it was
Because so far, everything that you have about this transaction, it is on WhatsApp.
Yes.
How did you get
No, this
this
one,
other
he
document?
gave me a copy of it. The actual,
Who
the
gave
raw
you?
tender document, Sgt Nkosi.
To assist who? Who was the bidder that you were assisting?
Ngapesheya, that's his brother.
Okay.
And the requirements of that was grade A. They didn't have grade A, so they were never going to qualify for that bid.
Yes.
Because they had grade B.
No, I am answered. You were assisting Ngapesheya. You had Ngapesheya's documents in front of
No,
you.
I didn't
when
have
you made
to,
these
sorry,
observations.
I'm so sorry, Commissioner, I don't want to interject, apologies, but I just want to, I didn't have Ngapesheya's documents. I had a raw tender document that wasn't completed. I did not have Ngapesheya's documents. I had known that this requires grade A. They don't have grade A cards.
Yes, but you say in the message, you say Ngapesheya is grade B and has nothing in the documents. So you had Ngapesheya's documents.
Maybe just
The
to,
question is, which documents? You can't walk back this message. This message, clearly, you had Ngapesheya's documents. That's why you're able to say there's nothing in the documents.
with all due respect, I was referring to the tender document. I had a document. It was a raw tender document.
Why do you know that Ngapesheya has nothing in the documents if you're looking at a raw, what you call a raw, unnamed, it doesn't have anyone's name?
Yes.
If that's the document you have in your hands,
Yes.
how do you know that Ngapesheya is B and there is nothing in the documents?
So my point of reference and what I meant with this message, as you can even see, the sentence structure and the construction is not so good. However, Ngapesheya is grade B. There's nothing in the documents about grade B.
Oh, you're not saying that. You're saying, and has nothing in the documents. Ngapesheya has nothing in the documents. That's the only sensible way of reading this message. It has nothing to do with construction or misunderstanding. When you read this and you read it sensibly, you're saying Ngapesheya is grade B and has nothing in the documents. So you are working off Ngapesheya's documents.
Honorable Commissioner, I think I'm just going to clarify that again because I know the document I was working on, and it was the tender document. I say here, Ngapesheya is grade B, and there's nothing in the documents. So I meant that there's nothing in the document about grade B, because this particular tender required grade A, did not require grade B.
Okay.
Maybe it's how I wrote it at that point in time, but the interpretation and what I meant when I sent that, regardless of how quick I was and my inability to correct the sentence structure at that stage, but that's what I meant.
And when you say we need grade A guards, if you are not participating in this tender, who is the we? Why are you speaking as a party participating in a tender,
Yeah.
if you're not a party to it?
Unfortunate Chair, Commissioner, this is how we would normally refer to each other. There are many instances in the chat where I say ours, which should have been him, where he say ours, where it should have been me. So it was a way that we would speak. And there are many instances that I can also show you in this, where I say can we, whereas it meant you. It was just a way that we adopted of speaking. It was an informal conversation.
So you say all that you had was the raw documentation when the tender was issued and not Ngapeshea's documents.
Yes, Chairperson, that's what I'm saying.
Yes. Of course, I'm aware that you say that the language here that is in the text that Commissioner Baloyi has just referred to needs some refinement. But as it stands, it says, and has nothing in the documents. So that obviously refers back to Ngapeshea. So if Ngapeshea has nothing in the documents, that could not possibly be reference to the raw documentation you have referred to.
Commissioner, it is in reference to grade B. Ngapeshea is grade B. There's nothing in the documents about grade B. That was the intention and that was the understanding when I wrote this message.
Yeah, but it has nothing, it may well have been about grade B, but looking at the documents, it has nothing on what is required. And it can only be because you've gone through its documents that you are able to pronounce on what it has or does not have in the documents. That can only be in Ngapeshea's documents, not the raw documents. Otherwise, this is totally senseless.
Commissioner, with due respect, this was in reference to the tender document and the key requirements from the mandatory perspective. Within that, the requirement...
What could it possibly have had then from the raw data? Because it could either have had or not to have had documents based on what it had submitted. So you could only make that pronouncement based on what it had submitted. You say it has nothing in the documents.
So nothing.
You could not pronounce on that based on the raw data, because the raw data has nothing to do with the specifics, that is Ngapeshea's documents.
Yes, Chair. But I can pronounce on the key requirements is by the raw document. I was already aware.
That cannot assist you. Looking at the raw data without comparing with what Ngapeshea has or does not have, the raw data cannot assist you. So to keep referring to the raw data does not, cannot assist you.
Chair, I respectfully disagree with that notion. Those were the sequence of events. I looked at
those were the what?
That is what was happening, the sequence of events. I had the raw document. It required grade A. Ngapeshea is grade B. They had nothing in the documents about grade B. Unfortunately, in this stage...
And if, I'm sure if I ask you, let me know, and how had you established that Ngapeshea was grade B? I know what the answer is going to be, but let me hear it.
I was informed, Chair.
I knew that was going to be the answer. But what is sensible to me is that you actually had Ngapeshea's documents. You saw from the raw data what was required, which was grade A. And you looked at Ngapeshea's documents, you saw that it was grade B. That is why you are able to refer to the documents, which in context could only have been Ngapeshea's documents, but I will leave it at that.
Please look at 535 quickly. Same file 4.
Excuse me?
535.
Page 535.
Yes. Are you
I'm
there?
on page 535, Commissioner.
Are you there?
Yes.
So these are Ngapeshea's documents. and the SIRA grading, you see the recognized training qualification as of date of issue, grade B.
Yes.
That's the only place you could have picked that up. Because somebody telling you that Ngapesha is grade B would have required that you verify it. You couldn't positively say, I know that Ngapesha is grade B. What is required is something else. You must have seen this document on 535 for you to be able to positively state that Ngapesha is grade B.
Commissioner, I did not see that document, firstly. Secondly, I was aware that it is grade B because I was informed. And thirdly, my job was to advise on the raw tender document whether is it grade A or B. They are grade B, there's no way they were going to qualify for that specific bid. And further to that, Commissioner, this has nothing to do with TMPD1 completely.
And it must be a coincidence then that this document also features in the chats and you didn't see it. It must be a coincidence that it finds its way into chat 357.
So, Commissioner, this was never sent to me, by the way. So I don't have these chats. I think SC Chaskelson was clear. These were chats between Sgt Nkosi and DC Dlamini. I don't have that.
Yeah. But it must be a coincidence that it features in the chats around the same time that the discussion about Ngapesha's grading is taking place.
Commissioner, like I said, I've not seen those documents. They were never ever sent to me. Even the first set that the SC Chaskelson was referring to. I've never seen them. I'm only responding now because the Commission is posing questions to me.
And you remember what the tender documents were for which municipality?
I don't remember,
but
unfortunately.
They were delivered to you. You said you received the hard copy.
I had seen a hard copy, yes.
Thank you.
Let me show you why the answer you are giving is not correct when you say you had only the raw document. At that page 228, there was a message that we were looking at. It could not have been a raw by raw, you mean the standard tender document which is not completed, because in that same message, in the message after Ngapesha is grade B, the very next message from you says, please send to US and request him to provide him with information for correction, right? So you're seeking a correction. You are sitting with a document which is completed in a way that you have determined or you've been told doesn't meet the requirements. Otherwise, a blank document doesn't require correction. If indeed you were working with a blank document or your standard tender document that was issued, there would be nothing for Ngapesha to correct. You would simply have said, tell him he needs to submit a grade A certificate, but you're speaking about correction. So that is consistent with you were looking at a completed tender document of Ngapesha and you picked up errors or shortcomings about it, which is that it is indicated grade B, and you're saying Dlamini must advise him to correct this, which you have seen. So it is not correct and it's not truthful for you to say the reference to documents where you say nothing in the documents speak to a blank standard tender document. What I'm putting to you is you were sitting with a Ngapesha document. That is why you are advising Nkosi to tell Dlamini to tell Ngapesha or Begi to make a correction. That's the only sensible construction of this series of WhatsApp messages, not what you're telling us. And the sensible construction is you were working off Ngapesha's documents.
May I respond, Commissioner?
Yes, you may.
So respectfully, I disagree with that inference. Why I'm telling you that is these are my chats. And I understood what I was going to and what I was saying in reference to this. There's no assumption that I'm making in terms of this. Fortunate part is that these were informal and there was no formality in the manner in which we were having these discussions. I did confirm to you as a commission that I had a raw document from that institution. I picked up one shortcoming. I stopped looking at the rest because I saw you're never going to make this if there's a shortcoming of this nature. If you want to get this matter resolved, please speak to yes, maybe he can advise you further on how to get this corrected. That was the notion around this discussion. It was not in relation to any tender document for the city of Tshwane. It was not in relation to TMPT1, and I did not have a completed set of documents for the entity Ngapeshe.
How do you answer?
Was it not a conflict of interest anyway for you to be, at the same time, around the same time, to be assisting Ngapeshe with a tender, even if, according to you, there was a totally different tender and for another municipality? When Ngapeshe was competing for an award within your municipality, in a process where you were going to be one of the adjudicators as the chairperson of the bid adjudication committee, was that not a conflict of interest?
No, it was not, Chair. It had no relationship with the city of Tshwane at all. Further to that, why I'm saying no, I'm just trying to expand on that, Commissioner Kumalo, is that it had nothing to do with the city of Tshwane, firstly. Secondly, I did not look at I did not look at any attachments and conducted a physical assessment of what was there. I just looked at the raw document and provided advice on a key area, which is not done, you just forget about that. So there was no conflict of interest, firstly, because of those two reasons. Secondly, as a result of this tender that was already open. It hadn't closed at that point in time, and I was just giving friendly advice in a similar way where I would get informal legal advice from an attorney. It does not necessarily mean, who is a friend of mine for argument's sake, does not necessarily mean that that is something that I must pay that individual for, firstly, or that is something that I'm binded. It's simple advice. So it was no harm from my perspective because I was not involved in this tender. It had nothing to do with my employment. I only interacted with raw documentation as well.
For a chief financial officer, that's a very narrow view of a conflict of interest. You, by agreeing to assist, have come to have a relationship with this entity, not just a relationship, but a relationship in terms of which you assist that entity with the preparation of its bid. By preparation, I don't necessarily mean starting from the beginning, but at the point at which that bid was, you were requested to assist to make sure that that bid document was what it ought to be or to have been. And that same entity is participating as a competitor in a bid process which you are going to chair, at the stage of deciding with a view to a recommendation to the municipal manager to recommend whether to award or not to award. It's at the tail end of the process. You basically adjudicate. And you say there is no conflict of interest? In my view, that's a very, very narrow view of what a conflict of interest is.
Chairperson, if I may respond, I think firstly, there's no association between this and the city of Tshwane. That immediately absolved me of any conflict of interest. Besides, I've got no interest, whether financial or of any other sort, whether they receive or they are appointed within that area where I'm assisting in review, in looking at the raw documentation and what the requirements are. I've got no interest in that. I stand not to benefit. I have not been promised any monies. I have not been promised any funds. It's just merely a friend who specializes in these matters to have a look at what's key as per those documents. That's the context roughly on this. Secondly, providing advice when bids are open, it's the nature of my job. It forms part and parcel of that. I try to demonstrate as well that when I made a presentation on GM2 and GM3, even if this was a tender within the city of Tshwane, within the applicable open period, I am allowed to say, this is what you need. Clarify in general terms. This is a matter that was further escalated to the city's war room as a result of items of this nature serving as a red tape, if I might put it as such, where individuals were being disqualified for petty issues which could have easily been avoided had they understood the contents of the requirements of any bids. As long as it's within a particular open period, firstly. Secondly, as long as I don't interact and I provide general advice, which is what I did in this aspect, Chair.
This is different. Oh, sorry. This is totally different. This is your friend's brother's company.
Yes.
You assist that company for a bid, which, as you say, was for some other entity, whatever the entity was. So it's something that you have a close or intimate relationship with. You have said you are close friends with Sgt Nkosi. So this is his brother's company. Based on what you are telling us, you did not even see a need to make a disclosure when the bids were being adjudicated and you were chairing that process. I'm sure, based on how you are responding to me now, you did not even see a need for a disclosure. In fact, I will suggest to you that you basically do not know what a conflict of interest is if you can have as narrow a view as you have, or as you have explained. Now, can you respond in particular to the fact that this is not just any entity, it's an entity belonging to your close friend's brother. You assist with the preparation of a bid. Is that not likely to give the perception, if this were to be known, is it not something that will give the perception that surely he's going to favor this company, even in the bid that he is adjudicating now? It's on that basis that I say that your view of a conflict of interest is very, very narrow. And I do not understand that coming from a chief financial officer. Please respond.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, I see where you're coming from, but I must, with due respect, disagree with you. On the basis, firstly, that within the city of Tshwane, there's segregation of duties in terms of the appointment process, and there's no way whatsoever that I can do, Chair, to influence that process. Nothing at all. I demonstrated how that process worked, Chairperson.
There's nothing you can what?
There's nothing I can do to influence. And I have not influenced.
Conflict of interest is not necessarily about the reality of you actually doing something. It also concerns perceptions. Are you saying, as you are sitting there, that you are not aware of that? That conflict of interest only relates to what you may actually have done.
Chair, you gave me a loaded question. I need to respond to all aspects of that. I'm not ignoring everything else that you have raised. I will touch on them. But I needed to touch on the most important factors first.
Yes.
And those most important factors firstly is I did not influence the process within the appointment of TMPD. I could not influence that process. My virtue at BAC was purely to provide oversight to ensure all compliance matters were adhered to, not to influence, to play an oversight on that.
You see, my question is not about whether, as a matter of fact, you influence the process. That's not where I am. And you heard me and you heard the lengthy explanation I gave, and you have not addressed that. You choose to address whether you actually influence the process. That's not my question. Can you please answer my question now?
Apologies, Chairperson, I'm getting there. Your load question was extremely
Oh, no,
loaded.
you went quiet, I thought.
No, I was still
I'm
speaking.
sorry.
I was
Okay,
stopped
okay.
while
Please continue, please continue.
Secondly, Chair, me providing general advice on a bid that's outside the city without any expectation of inducement, payment, or anything of that nature, it can't say I've got a conflict of interest because I'm not interested in that. It's a general way of providing advice. Like I'm also saying, had it been at the city as well, if the prescription process was still open, it's normal to do that. And it's acceptable on a general terms. Secondly, in terms of the conflict of interest, I've got no interest in his brother's company. He's my friend. So, Chairperson, by virtue of people being friends with me, now, for an example, everyone needs to disclose wherever they are because I'm the friend of a CFO of another institution for argument's sake. That's a bit difficult, Chair, because I've got no interest in that. I'm not friends with his brother. I'm his friend. So conflict of interest and another individual suffering as a result of this friendship would be extremely harsh. I had no interest. I was promised no gratification. Hence, at this point, I can formally confirm and disagree with the notion that I was conflicted. I was not conflicted on two aspects. I did not interact with physical documents. On general terms, looked and advised on a document that doesn't even relate to the city of Tshwane. Whilst this process was closed a long time ago, which relates to the city of Tshwane, I had no involvement or influence on that. Hence, I'm just trying to touch on the most important point that you raised, Chair, so I can have that on record on why I'm saying I respectfully disagree with that notion. I don't have an interest in his brother's company. Maybe it's unfortunate that I'm his friend, but I don't have an interest at that at all. I don't expect to receive anything from him or his brother.
Second, last question. So according to you, the test for conflict of interest is subjective and based on what you think. I did not. So according to you, the test for conflict of interest is purely subjective based on whatever that it is that you actually did or what you thought or what you believed. The test is subjective.
Chair, according to me, conflict of interest is if you are interested in a particular firm, you've got an association with its directors.
Can you please answer directly? Is it subjective? Is the test for conflict of interest purely subjective? Can you please answer the question directly, Mr. Mnisi?
No, Chairperson. Can I explain?
Yes.
My explanation, Chairperson, is that my understanding, the answer is no to your question. A further explanation is that, firstly, conflict of interest is if it's clear from my perspective when I read the documentation that I sign. Do you have an interest in the company or any of its directors? Is there an association of any sort? From my perspective, the answer was no. And it remains no, even at this stage, Chairperson.
Lastly, so basically, and I'm sure the answer is going to be in the affirmative. So from where you are sitting, you saw no need whatsoever to disclose that you had this relationship or interaction with Ngapesheya through Sgt Nkosi. You would not even have seen a need to disclose.
No, Chair.
Thank you.
At that page 228, and I think what I want to raise with you is that it's either you're correct or you're truthful that this was a tender for another institution and not for Tshwane, or in fact, it was for Tshwane. And I want to suggest to you that at 228, where you say we need a grade A guards, that suggests that you're speaking for Tshwane, because at that time you are the CFO of Tshwane. So you are speaking, you're telling Sgt Nkosi what your employer, what your institution needs. And for me, that is consistent with what you do at page 178, after you are given a list that we find at 177, which has Ngapesheya at item 2, that list where you are to deal with matters in order of priority. And your response to that list, first you say, thanks Mfowethu, I'm on top of this, but more importantly, and this is what I'm raising with you, at 178, right at the top, you say, this is ours, Mfowethu. This is the final list, right? So this is ours, Mfowethu, of a list that contains Ngapesheya. When you read that with 228, where you say we need grade A guards, speaks to a Tshwane tender in which you have an interest, and the interest being that Ngapesheya gets this contract, whether or not you're going to get money or not, your interest is that Ngapesheya gets this tender. So that's the first scenario, and I say to you, that's a more probable picture of what was happening here. The second is what you are saying, the second possibility, is, just keep in, you can do notes of what I'm putting to you so that you can respond. The second is, you're correct, the possibility is you're correct, this was for another institution, and you were assisting with completing the Ngapesheya documents so that they are successful in that tender with another institution. But that is still problematic for your position because you are promoting or rooting for the commercial success, financial success of Ngapesheya to succeed in that tender. And that must raise a problem for your position in the BAC as the chairperson, because on the one transaction, you clearly want Ngapesheya to succeed with another institution if we believe and accept that it was for another institution. Well, when you're a chairperson, we must accept that you still have the same interest and bias towards Ngapesheya that it must succeed, even if you get nothing. So on either scenario, it's not helpful to you. In the one, it's an outright case of an illegality, in fact. In the one, where you are participating in the corruption of a tender process that is already underway at Tshwane. The alternative is you are promoting the financial interests of Ngapesheya in another institution, and that should have disqualified you to sit as a BAC chair in Tshwane 1, or in fact you should have declared. You may comment if you want to.
Thank you, Commissioner. With your permission, I would really like to comment on that. And commenting, I want to start on the first scenario that you gave. The first scenario that you gave, you mentioned that this is probable, that this was for a City of Tshwane tender, and I'd probably say for TMPD 1. So I'm going to request us to do that same exercise and to test whether grade A guards were necessary for TMPD 1. This will, in some way or form, try and deal with this aspect conclusively now. So you look at the same annexes that I provided on GM 13. On GM 13, I want to refer you to two places. The second bundle of my own submissions. In the message, it was clear that the requirement for that bid was grade A. If you look at page 156 of the second bundle, page 156 of the second bundle, right at the bottom, personnel per region, security personnel, 2 grade B or higher, meaning grade B is sufficient. Further to that, I want to take you to page number, just 1 minute. I'll take you to evaluation criteria. There we go. For argument's sake, we could refer to page 212 of my bundle, still, Commissioner Balloon. On my bundle, still page 212, right at the top, to validate that this was grade B and nothing more. So based on that, I would refer to the Commission to this instance and to state on record that there was no relationship whatsoever. So the first situation is completely not there. The first scenario that you have provided, Commissioner Waloy, is completely not existent because this was a requirement for grade B guards. The document that I was assessing was purely for grade A. So on those grounds, there's no relation whatsoever to that. And we can't, with all due respect, link that to 177 and 178. It's completely not related.
Can I just ask you a question for clarification? In that page 212,
Yes.
there is a grade B supervisor.
Yes.
And there's a grade C
Yes.
guard.
Yes.
And your certificate here is a grade B, the one that you were discussing with Commissioner Khumalo. So what is the relationship here?
So grade A.
Specifically, I'm asking B and C because
Okay.
you are referring us to 212
Yes.
as evidence to show
Yes.
that, in fact, the requirement of TMPD 1 was not A.
Yes.
What do I see in 212?
What you
If
see in
it's explained.
212 is firstly that you needed grade B or higher. So grade B was the highest that you needed. If you had grade A, it's just a plus. It's not going to score you any additional points. Grade C was the lower level guards. So in terms of hierarchy, there's grade A, B, and C guards. A is presumably the highest level, from my understanding. For this tender TMPD1, they needed only grade B and grade C. And Ngapeshia, by virtue of having grade B as their director, they had grade C in terms of all other guards. So now I'm going to move over to the second scenario that you're bringing on board. And I will agree with you. I'm here to the Commission to present a true circumstance of what occurred. And this is what happened. This was for another institution, purely for another institution, where they had asked me for general advice, taking into account that I am a CFO and I specialize with issues of this nature. General advice did not interact physically with documents. That particular tender was still open. I gave that advice subsequent to having a look at the critical documents that were there. Chair, I did not actively want them to succeed. I just played my role to give general advice. With the evidence that we have in front of us in the communications, I did not actively want them to succeed. I was not interested in that. I was just interested in my role of giving advice as requested by a friend. I did not actively want them to win in this tender whatsoever. That was up to them in terms of what document they put in place which leads them to be successful.
And what did you know about General Dlamini's involvement with this tender on the second scenario? I mean,
So-
why are you redirecting them to General Dlamini? This has nothing to do with Tshwane.
Yes. So at this point, I knew that General Dlamini and Sgt Nkosi were very close. So I didn't want to take this matter any further. And I said, if you want any further advice, please speak to US. He also knows a lot about issues of this nature.
No. That's not what your message says. Your message says he must speak to, Dlamini must tell him to make a correction. So you knew that Dlamini is intimately involved. Otherwise, you would not have referenced Dlamini. You would have simply said to Nkosi, if this was a matter between you and Nkosi, you would have said to Nkosi, tell Begi to make that correction. You say, Dlamini must tell him to make the correction. So you know that General Dlamini is involved with whatever's going on.
Commissioner, I knew that they were close, hence I
No.
referred him to him.
Okay, all right, that's your answer.
Can I just clarify my understanding of how you explain these texts? That first one, Ngapeshia is grade B and has nothing in the documents. You said that you hadn't seen Ngapeshia's documents, that you knew that they were grade B only, and that this raw tender document for this third-party municipality or government required grade A. Is that what your version is?
I knew that from seeing the raw tender document.
From seeing the tender document,
Yes.
the invitation to tender, yes.
Exactly.
So that third-party municipality or organ of state was asking for grade A guards, and you knew, because you could see the document.
Yes.
And you knew that Ngapeshia had no grade A guards.
Yes.
But your next message says, Mfowethu, please send to US and request him to provide him with information for the correction.
Yes.
If Ngapeshia has no grade A guards, how could they ever correct this problem?
Meaning they will need to apply for that. That tender process was still open. They need to get advice on how the application process works to get an upgrade
Sorry, get an upgrade
to grade A.
to grade A.
Yeah.
So the advice that they were going to get from General Dlamini was how you can get an upgrade to grade A.
From my perspective, they had grade B. They were never going to be compliant for that. I had to refer them to someone who had more knowledge of SIRA and the security industry, which was the general at this instance. Hence, he would be in the position to give them further advice on what to do to get this issue corrected. There was nothing further I could do about that.
So you thought that General Dlamini could advise them on how to go about upgrading their SIRA status from B to A?
Precisely.
I see. Do you have any sense of how long that takes?
I don't know. I'm not aware. I don't know how that works.
And how long was this third-party tender bid open for?
Oh, with all due respect, yes, I don't recall.
You then say we need grade A guards. Who's we?
So we is this unfortunate way of how we refer to each other, and it's repetitive in these discussions. Even when it's something that involves him, we say ours. We've seen that on many occasions. I said we in this instance as well. It was a way that we used to speak. It was an informal discussion. There was nothing formal about this matter. I knew exactly. I knew he would be able to understand this. This was just our way of speaking.
So the we is an informal way that you refer to yourself, Sgt Nkosi, and General Dlamini?
No. Sometimes I say we, you must do that. Sometimes he'd say ours, even though it's my responsibility or it's a matter that rests with me. So we use such terms interchangeably because I think at this point we had become good friends.
Brother for life. In
Yes.
you, I have found brother for life.
At this point, we were friends, Commissioner.
Brother for life.
Commissioner, we were friends.
I didn't understand you to take issue with that. In you, I found a brother for life.
Chair, I'm not taking issue. I'm responding and I'm saying we were friends.
This is more than friends. This is brothers for life.
And I did engage in my sworn affidavit that he had in fact become like a brother to me. He was there for me in an extremely difficult period of my life.
Yes.
And the support he had provided me, Chair, no one would have provided me such.
So he
So
was
at
like-
that point, he was really a brother to me.
He was like family.
He showed me,
Like, not family. He was like family.
he was like family, Commissioner. He wasn't family though. He was just a good friend of mine, so I'm not related to him.